You open your laptop, you go into Google Ads and you open your campaigns and you realize that very recently you are starting to see a downturn in performance. Things that used to work are no longer working. What is going on? You don't think you've done anything wrong. All of the changes you've made to the campaign are things you typically do as part of campaign management. And you don't think anything different has really changed fundamentally in the campaign, but yet performance is declining. Well, today you are in luck, because what I'm going to do is break down the investigation process I use when looking at campaigns where performance randomly just starts dropping off a cliff for what seems like no reason. Let's get into it and understand the process I go through to fix this. The first thing to understand is that there are two different types of investigation when looking at random sudden drops in performance. These are a volume issue or an overall performance issue. Now, of course, everything's a performance issue, but let's start off with the volume side. Now, what I mean by this is, are you seeing a reduction in clicks and impressions in your campaign? Because, of course, if you're getting less clicks and less impressions in your campaigns, you are going to see a drop in performance because less people see your website and your ads. And obviously, of course, if less people are seeing your site, you're going to get less conversions. Performance will drop as a result of this issue. Strangely enough, it might sound like it's terrifying when this happens, but of the two issues I'm talking about in terms of a volume issue or a performance issue, a volume issue is usually much more easy to troubleshoot. There is going to be a very identifiable source of why you are seeing a sudden drop in impressions and clicks. And unfortunately, it's probably something that you did, which is a shame because you don't think you're doing anything to harm your campaigns, but listen to this list of things you might have done. Have you changed keyword match types recently? Maybe you were on a more open match type, like maybe broad match, which is very rare, but also maybe even phrase match, and you might have moved down to an exact match strategy. So if you move from broad to phrase or from phrase to exact, you're going to see a drop in volume as those match types are much more restrictive. Google's going to enter you into much less auctions because less user queries are going to match your keywords. So making a change to match types can have this effect. Or maybe you've been a bit too over aggressive with negative keywords, and as a result you've restricted the campaign so much from traffic that used to be valuable that maybe things aren't working as they used to work. Now, when you restrict a campaign with negative keywords, of course, the idea is you block searches that are not relevant to what you're doing. But sometimes if you get too aggressive, you can actually block some really positive searches that could lead to conversion. And when I say lead to conversion, it doesn't necessarily mean that those search terms have a conversion against them in the column within the search terms report. What it actually means is it could be a stepping stone or a touch point towards somebody that converts. So you have really high intent buying keywords, but you also have more generic keywords in your account as well. And if you get too restrictive and restrict some of that generic traffic that could have been helping you, you might have eliminated your good traffic through negative keywords. Again, looking at when the performance started to drop off and looking at your change history where you can see which specific negatives you added to your campaign, that will help you understand whether or not this is an issue, and it's quite an easy one to resolve. You just revert the negative keywords that are causing the issue. The last two changes you might have made that had a negative impact on your performance are if you've narrowed your targeting. So say you were targeting a 50-mile radius and you've shrunk it down to 40, or maybe you've removed some towns and cities, or maybe added some negative location targeting that overlaps with your positive targeting. That's going to have an effect. But what's more likely is you've changed your bid strategy recently, because this is a whole other thing that can cause an issue. If you change your target CPA from something like $50 and restrict that down to $40, that's going to have an impact because Google won't be able to bid as aggressively in your campaigns to meet your new bidding target because it's much more restrictive. They have to try and come in on target, and that means they have to lower their bids at the point of auction. Lowering your bids will lower the number of auctions you enter, therefore lowering your traffic. So that can have a negative impact as well. But not just that, because the other thing to consider is if you change your bidding strategy, you also have to go through a learning phase. And if your campaign is in learning, sometimes Google can get a bit shy and it doesn't spend your budget, which is a bit shocking, I know, Google not spending money. But that can happen sometimes because it's trying to figure out how to spend your money. And also, I covered the learning phase in another video, which I've linked in the description below. But one thing to remember is as well, after the learning phase has officially ended, there is also an extended period of time Google needs to still continue to adjust, even after it says learning has finished. So take that into consideration. After the learning phase is finished, give campaigns a couple of weeks at least to try and find its feet when running a campaign with a smart bidding strategy. Give it some time to bed in and understand how to spend your budget correctly. And if all of that hasn't changed, then the last thing to check in with is your ad statuses. Are they all eligible and fully operational? If they are restricted because of maybe you violated a trademark by mistake, or maybe Google thinks you've crossed over into industries it doesn't necessarily like to show too many impressions for, and maybe you're approved limited, that can cause issues as well. So always check the status of your ads, because when you see a sudden drop, usually your ad status could be one of those causes as well. If you didn't do any of the things I mentioned to cause this drop in performance, well, stick with me because we're moving now onto the things that you might not have done but could affect your campaigns. One of the reports I use quite frequently when I see a drop in performance is going into the Auction Insights report, because this will compare your performance on the search results in terms of visibility with your competitors. And if you keep an eye on this report, you generally get to understand where or whereabouts your campaign sits in terms of impression share. Generally speaking, I see campaigns that sit around 20%, 30%, whatever it may be. And if I see a sudden increase or decrease on a particular week, then I know something has changed outside of my control. Either a competitor has dropped off and disappeared completely, which is kind of what you want really, but more often than not, there are more competitors. And if there's not more competitors, some of the existing competitors may have become even more competitive and increased their bids by virtue of increasing their CPA target to spend more on getting leads than you are willing to pay. If they're willing to pay more for a lead than you are, and significantly more at that, Google will massively increase their bids, giving them a bigger share of the clicks and more visibility, and taking food off of your table. Now, when this happens, you have two plays. You can, of course, lay down and accept defeat because you can't afford to compete with them, which sometimes is the case. Sometimes that's just the unfortunate nature of advertising. If you have a maximum CPA of £50 and you can't pay a penny more for your conversions, don't compete. It doesn't make any sense. Why continue operating at a significant loss for a channel that is all about direct return? It doesn't make any sense. But if you can afford to pay a little bit more for your traffic and pay a little bit more for your conversions, it makes sense to try and compete a little bit more, to understand you're going to pay more for those conversions, but you're going to uplift your volume back towards the levels that it used to be previously before your campaign started dropping off. Another thing to check into, especially for those business owners running ads on Google who have unfortunately listened to what Google and their reps are saying, is you need to check that auto apply recommendations are turned off completely. So auto apply recommendations, they are basically where Google will automatically add assets to your ads, add keywords to your account, automatically update your campaign bidding strategy, all of those different things automatically based on what they think is going to help you. Generally speaking, nobody understands your business as much as Google, and if you are managing your campaigns directly, then this is something you definitely want completely turned off. And in fact, if you're not managing your campaigns, you probably still want this turned off, because you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're going to get declines in performance if you let Google just take the reins completely of your campaign. Head over to your recommendations tab and go into auto apply, and you can check and see if all of the options are disabled. If you have any options in this list ticked, then you need to turn them off because they're going to be harming your performance. And if you have initially put these on, over time you might not even realize anything's happening because Google takes a lot of data before it starts auto applying recommendations. But over time, it will get confident and it will start making changes to your campaign automatically. And that is where you can start to see declines in performance because Google thinks it knows more than you when it probably doesn't. Up next, head into your search terms report and take a look at when things were working really well. Look at the search terms you are getting traffic for, look at the search terms that are generating conversions, and then check the snapshot where things are declining. Are the pictures similar? Are they the same? Are you getting visibility for the terms that you used to get visibility for? If not, then there is a problem. It means those terms have become outside of your remit. Maybe it ties back to what I said before about maybe those terms becoming more competitive with people bidding more for them, meaning you lose visibility on those terms. But when you look into your search terms report and you're seeing that you're getting traffic for things that you never used to, or you're not getting traffic anymore for things that you did get when things were working really well, you need to change that. You need to basically make sure you get visibility on the terms you are converting well with. And that means optimizing your performance and your structure based on giving those keywords and those search terms additional visibility. Make sure that the previous good performance that you saw before the drop-off is reflected in future performance by ensuring visibility on these terms. Another thing to check into is your year-over-year performance. Maybe you just forgot that things start declining at a certain period of the year. Now, you might think that's crazy because you've been in business for quite a while and you understand the trends of a market, but you will be surprised to realize that there are a lot of business owners out there who don't remember the trends in their own businesses because they're too busy working on the business. They don't really keep an eye on these things. That's up to us as specialists in Google Ads to keep an eye on these things. So head over into your reporting and check the previous year, and if there is a dip at certain points in the year and you're inside one of those dips, then it's going to be a seasonality issue. There's not a lot you can do apart from ride out the storm and understand what's going to happen in the future based on those historical seasonal trends. You'll understand when things will start picking up again. A key example of this is, for example, the furniture market here in the UK. In the summer, it tends to get very quiet because people go on holiday, furniture is not really a priority for them, and that's why all furniture companies go on sale during the summer, because there's no one buying and they need to stimulate demand. So that's something to consider as well. The last thing to check in on is going to be your quality score and your click-through rate, because these can be really good signs as to what's happening in your campaign based on how Google sees your account and sees your campaign setup. Because believe it or not, these factors can change and they are intertwined, because the lower your click-through rate gets over time, the lower your quality scores are going to get, because Google will see your ads as less relevant and your expected click-through rate is going to drop. And then of course, if Google sees your website as less relevant for whatever reason it is and your quality score changes, it means you have to bid more aggressively to reach the same number of people and get the same levels of visibility. And if you don't do that, then it means again your click-through rate can drop as a result. So these two metrics are intertwined, and click-through rate is a big factor as part of quality score. Now, quick disclaimer here, quality score is not used during the bidding process. I hear people talk all the time about how quality score is part of the bidding process. It's not. Quality score is a feedback loop from Google. It's where Google are basically saying, here's how I see your keywords in your campaign. I've given them a score based on how I think they sit compared to other advertisers out there in the space. Quality score is not one of the 6 ad rank factors I've talked about in a previous video. You can see those linked in the description as well, what the ad rank factors are, but quality score is not one of them. So what can happen sometimes is Google randomly decides to drop your quality score. Now, I've gone into campaigns where nothing has changed, nobody's changed any landing pages, but the quality score of a particular keyword starts to decline. This is an indication that Google is seeing some of your keywords as less relevant than they used to be, and if you're not willing to pay more, or you don't have the bidding strategy set in order to allow you to pay for more for your traffic, then you're going to start to see a decline in performance and visibility as a result. So sometimes you just have to play Google's game here. Even though, as I say, quality score is not a metric used in the bidding, if it's dropping, there's a reason for it. Google are seeing things as less relevant. So you have to build up more relevancy, even if it's something you didn't do before. So that means better segmenting your campaigns into specific themed ad groups, and then segmenting your landing page strategy as well. So having landing pages that align perfectly with your ad groups. Even if you hadn't done this before, if you're seeing a drop in your quality scores and your click-through rate, it's something you probably want to do as well. For example, if I am a Mercedes-Benz repair garage and I have an ad group for repair and service with both types of keyword in, if I'm getting lower quality scores, I might want to segment them into a repairs ad group and a service ad group to make them much more specific, much more relevant, and giving those keywords all of the relevancy factors compared to the ad in the ad group. That's going to help me massively increase my quality score. And if I layer that on top of having a landing page strategy that's segmented, so say for argument's sake, I had a repairs landing page and a service landing page where before they were both unified, segmenting them and theming them on top of those new ad groups is going to have a positive impact as well. So all of these factors can help you better improve your quality score, and sometimes you just have to try and take action if you're seeing that score start to decline. And Google is fickle. They will just decide to drop your quality score sometimes, and it's a signal, as I say, that Google is seeing your ads as less relevant, so you kind of have to take action. One last disclaimer on that last point though. I do not advocate the use of single keyword ad groups, known in the industry as SKAGs, because this kind of setup, where it used to work back in the day where manual CPC was basically all of Google Ads before the world of smart bidding and automation, That is a strategy that used to work, but now it does not work in a setup with a modern strategy that simplifies everything to allow spend to flow through ad groups and Google to optimize your bids at the point of auction. Setting up in that way will make it much more difficult for Google to optimize performance, so it's really important to use a more simplified setup and use themed ad groups to better run your campaigns. Stay away from SKAGs, they don't really work as a strategy anymore. So there you have it. That is the list of things I look into when investigating why there has been a sudden drop in performance. Sometimes it's all about the waiting game, but sometimes you have to go on the offensive as well and make changes to counteract what you are seeing. Let me know in the comments if this is an issue you've seen before. I reply to pretty much every comment I get on all of my videos. Like this video if you like it, don't forget to subscribe, and if you want help with your campaigns, head over to darren-taylor.com and I'll be more than happy to assist.